What's going on, guys? Welcome back to Radar World. So in this video, we have the HogWorkz lower vented fairing speaker pods. All right, so welcome back to another episode on the El Dorado project. Now, this is more of a continuation of a project I have going on right now. This is the volunteer audio system install. You guys have probably already seen that video. If you haven't, make sure you go check that out. But if you're in the market for a set of speaker pods, this video is gonna be for you. Now, I do have the HogWorkz lower vented fairings installed, and I know I mentioned in that video that I was gonna switch over to the speaker pods once I get this system in. I'm really looking forward to it because it's gonna add that mid bass on the bottom. These are gonna sound amazing. If you guys haven't already seen the video with the lower vented fairing install, make sure you go check that out. I do have to swap out the vents and get them installed onto here. So we'll go ahead and get those off. After that, we can get those speakers in, get a good listen, and that's pretty much it. Other than that, let's get them installed. Now here I have the harnesses that I received from Volunteer Audio. Now these run inside the speaker pod, along the engine guard, and up to the fairing. So I'll take this cover off of the storage compartment. Now to remove the cover on the back, I am using a Pass-Thru 10mm socket because those screws on the back are pretty long. So you want to have something they can pass through, and this works well. So to remove the bottom clamp, I'm using a 13mm Pass-Thru socket. Now to get the storage compartment and that vent removed, I have 3 screws right here. I'll go ahead and get those out. Now to get these out, I'm using a Phillips head screwdriver. Now, all I want to do is just remove this vent assembly off this storage compartment and add it to the speaker pod. I have a 5/32 hex bit screw on the bottom, and on the inside there's a nut. I'll use a 10mm Pass-Thru socket. So I will reuse all the hardware from this vent assembly, so I'll make sure I keep track of that. Now I'll just get this mounted on to the speaker pod. So you have this square. You have these teeth right here. You want that square to sit inside this square. And then on your vent assembly, you have a square right there. That's where this one will sit. So I have my screw with my washer. I'll set that in there. You obviously want teeth to teeth. So I'll set this inside of here. I'll put on my spacer. I'll put on the washer. And then I'll secure my nut. Now when you're tightening this down, you want to make sure this all stays in place. Now you also want to make sure that this post is inside this channel. So you can kind of move it over, slide it over the channel, just like that. Now you don't want to tighten this down too tight where it won't move. You want to tighten it down just enough where you have positive feedback. Now, if you haven't done so already, you obviously want to dry fit your speaker. Make sure it's going to work inside the speaker pod. Now with this SV Hertz Neo speaker, it does work with the speaker pod. Now I will have to mount it upside down just because where these terminals are located, I can't mount it this way. It won't fit properly. So I do have to mount it upside down. Now here I have the speaker wiring from Volunteer Audio. Here you have your terminals. You have your positive and your negative. Now to run the speaker wiring through the speaker pod, you already have a pre-drilled hole right here. Now obviously this is not large enough to fit those terminals. Now you can pick anywhere you want along here on the bottom, or you can even come out the side. It's all on you. Now a lot of people get it confused and think that you run your wiring through here. This is where you mount your cap. Those screws go in right through here. And if you run your wiring through here, it's going to interfere with that. Now they already have a pre-drilled hole right here, but if I go into this hole with a larger bit, it's going to crack the side. So I'm just going to go up just a little bit right here and drill my hole. Now I do have some rubber grommets that I use. That way those wires aren't sitting on any sharp edges. I'll put a link down in the description below. So I'll route my speaker wiring through the bottom. Now I'll get the fairing body mounted and I'll get my 3 screws started. Now these are all self-tapping screws, so make sure you get these down nice and straight. All right, now I'll get this lower vented fairing mounted back on. I'll get my nut secured on the bottom just to hold it in place. So like I mentioned before in the previous video, if they don't fit nice and snug, you can squeeze them down with your fingers, or you can take a pair of pliers and just squeeze that down and they'll fit nice and snug on here. So these are welded on, but if you run into the issue where you over tighten and you break these welds, this will just spin on you, which won't allow you to tighten this down for your cap. So you want to make sure you don't over tighten these, or you will crack that weld and you won't be able to tighten down your cap. But if you do run into this issue, you can contact HogWorkz. They do have hardware kits for your lower vented fairings. Now, if you're having a problem lining these up, you can push these in or out, left or right, to get them to line up. So now I'll get this fairing cap lined up and put back on. Again, to tighten the nuts down on the cover, I'm using a 10mm pass-through socket. Now getting the nut to start on the screw can be a pain, so I'll just take a pair of needle-nose pliers and get it started. Now really quick, if you're having a fitment issue with your speaker pod and your fairing body, it might just be your mounting locations, or there might be some built up paint. You can file those down to get it to fit just right. All right, so now it's time to get the speaker connected. So I already did a test fit with these speakers. I know I have to mount them upside down in order for them to line up. As you can see, there's 2 white wires. Usually the one with a ribbed or a stripe is your positive and your solid is a negative. Volunteer Audio does have a variety of speaker grills that you can choose from, but here I'm gonna be going with the HogWorkz speaker grill. Now what's great about this Hertz Neo speaker is that you have a gasket on the outside and you also have a gasket on the inside. So I'll go ahead and make my connections. Now you just wanna make sure that they're on there good and they're not gonna come off. You can always squeeze them down with a pair of pliers to make them tighter. Now for some reason, these are mixed up. That's why it's always good to do a polarity test after you install them. All you have to do is just switch the wires. I'll go ahead and throw on my speaker grill with the HogWorkz logo on the bottom. I'll get these holes lined up. The speaker grill sits right on there, nice and snug. I'll go ahead and throw 1 screw in and I'll get that screw started. So I won't tighten it down all the way. I want to make sure that I have them all started. Now it's on you how you want to route your wires for your lower speakers, but I'm going to remount the fairing first and then route my wires. Now for the speakers, inside the speaker enclosures, you have connectors right here. The speakers for the lowers come with a harness that acts as a splitter, so you would just split it right here. Now for my lowers, I will zip tie the wiring harness along the engine guard and then route it up towards the fairing. So you would just unplug it right here. They only go in one way. You just plug it into here and then plug your other end into this side. So now you have your lowers connected and your speaker pods connected using the same power from the amp.